Yes, people, what's going on? Welcome to my channel. Welcome to Peter on Pole. My name is Peter in pole position, and we've got to discuss things. Absolutely, we do regarding that man, Carlos Sainz, as you can see in my background here, who's having a very interesting season, to say the least. What a 2024 it's been for him so far. We've only had 3 races in this season's calendar at the time of recording. Listen, a brand new year for Carlos Sainz, and he starts off with Lewis Hamilton taking his seat for next year in 2025. Then he has his situation where his appendix, one of his appendix has to be removed, and yeah, he's out for a few days, of course. He missed even a race weekend, the last one, which was in Saudi Arabia. Then he comes back to Australia, and guess what he goes and does? Not only does he return able to race, but my goodness, the guy wins the Australian Grand Prix. Did you hear me, people? Carlos Sainz won the Australian Grand Prix, absolutely, with an appendix missing. The man, after surgery, the man has come back and has shown great character, great strength, great mentality to come back and win. But listen, if there's anything that this win has done, it has raised conversation. It has raised topic to ask the question, what should Carlos Sainz be doing in 2025? He's without a drive, as many people already know. And if you didn't know, well, where have you been living? The situation, however, it's not as easy and as simple as it sounds, because there's seats going all over the place, okay? Now, with Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari, it means that there's a seat at Mercedes. It means that there could be potential movers going around to try and fulfill that Mercedes seat. People like Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin are talking about, you know, whether or not he's going to drive in Formula One next year. So nobody really knows what's going to take place and whether or not Fernando Alonso wants to be in the Aston Martin. Does he want to go to Mercedes? Does he want to have a butchers? Sergio Perez, always a man who seems to be in question when it comes to reliability, when it comes to competition, when it comes to helping Red Bull as a team. We know that Max Verstappen is elite at this moment in time. Red Bull have dominated this era, and Max Verstappen has been going away with the race wins. But Sergio Perez in the same car hasn't been doing as well. So Sergio Perez can be under pressure, and his contract expires, I think, either at the end of this season or it's the end of next season. But again, that could be tied. That could be cut short. Red Bull are known for cancelling their drivers' contracts depending on performance. And when you've got people like Christian Horner and Helmut Marko at the helm, anything is possible. Anything is possible with that Red Bull side. So, Carlos Sainz now, right? There's so many sort of ideas and so many questions to ask. You know, what do Mercedes do? What does Sainz do? What does Red Bull do? What does Alonso do? What does Aston Martin do? There is a lot going on. Now, since the news that Hamilton was going to Ferrari, one of the things that people linked, or one of the teams rather, that people linked Carlos Sainz with was with Sauber. Soon to be, well, owned by Audi, soon to become like the Audi Sauber team. At the moment, they're called Steak, Medium Rare, Kick F1. Okay, Punch, Kick, whatever you want to call them. No, in all seriousness, it's a Kick Sauber Steak F1 team. That's their name. And this season, they've been having a bit of a stinker, to say the least. Now, I think everybody's kind of forgiving them at the moment, because we know that when Audi come into play, it's going to be a whole new team. It's going to be a whole new revamp. Imagine like Braun, for example, when they join Formula One. It's going to be a completely new team. So who knows how they will compete in 2025, 26, 27, and so on. We don't know. We don't know what kind of team they will become. So everybody kind of linked Sainz that way. Obviously, Carlos Sainz, his dad, who's Carlos Sainz Sr., has got links with Audi. So it kind of, people started to head in that direction, and it made sense why people would link Carlos Sainz to that Audi deal. However, just looking at the way that that team is structured at the minute, even though not everybody's in play, the way that they're structured in the minute, I don't know. Carlos Sainz is not allowed to take risks at this stage of the season or this stage of his career. Carlos Sainz is at a precarious situation. He needs a big bumper contract. It'll probably be his last one. And he needs a contract to be, he needs to be in a car that, personally, he needs to be in a car that's fighting at the front of the grid. I don't think there's a world I can see where Carlos Sainz is now back, not even in the midfield. I mean, Sauber, they're at the back of the grid right now. Okay, this team is at the back of the grid as we currently are speaking. And who knows, maybe they might become a team that gets into the midfield. You never know. It could happen. But this is not one of those situations that a certain Carlos Sainz can take, in my opinion. I don't think he should. Aston Martin, now, if the Alonso situation becomes available, you might think, okay, you know what? Aston Martin could be a viable choice. And I'm not too sure how I feel about Aston Martin, because Aston Martin are they're a much better situation than, say, Sauber is. But you kind of don't know. 1 minute they were promising, and then they kind of flattered to deceive. Now they're somewhere in the middle between that two at this moment in time. Alonso still got the pace, and yeah, he looks like he's doing everything he can in that Sauber, in that Aston Martin. What am I talking about? So then where would a Carlos Sainz fit in that picture? Say it's Sainz and Stroll, for example. Let's say Alonso either retires or he moves on to another team. Okay. Then Carlos Sainz is in the Aston Martin. Can you see the Aston Martin fighting for pole positions? Can you see the Aston Martin fighting for race wins? Look, everybody's talking about different teams, how they're going to fare in 2026 when there's new regulations. And nobody's really spoken about Aston Martin, because Aston Martin, they're not an afterthought. That's not the right term. But they're they kind of see what's going on, and then they act, and then they arrive, and then we're like, oh, right, okay, of course, Aston Martin's here. Yeah. You know, and it's a team that you can't quite work out. They have to sell him the dream. If Aston Martin's got something up their sleeve, Aston Martin needs to sell them that dream. So Aston Martin, I'm just not sure. Can they be quick? Absolutely they can. Can they also be slow? Absolutely they can. And can they be somewhere in the middle currently, like where they are right now? I don't know. It might be safe to say that any move from here could be a downstep from Ferrari, but I'm not so sure. I look at Mercedes now, for example. Look, Mercedes are having a bit of a hellish year in 2024, and many people will say, you know what, maybe some Mercedes are finished, maybe they're done, maybe there's the Mercedes that we've got to know and we got used to, don't even think about them anymore, they are over, it's finished. So why would Carlos Sainz join that team? In fact, pay attention, why is Lewis Hamilton leaving them to go to Ferrari? You know, that's the question that will be raised. That's the question I'm sure Carlos and his agent, who I think is his cousin, his manager is his cousin, they'll be asking those questions. They'll be thinking the same thing. You know, why would I go to Mercedes when Lewis left there? You know, is Lewis just scratching an itch to get to Ferrari, or has he seen the writing on the wall of that Mercedes and thought, you know what, we're done. I'm fed up. It's over. We have to wait and see. But Mercedes is a funny one, because you look at George Russell, for example, right? And it seems like with Hamilton going, George Russell now becomes the number one driver at Mercedes. And I'm just a little bit like, I'm not too sure. I wouldn't speak too fast on that one, because if you bring in a Carlos Sainz, or if you bring in a Fernando Alonso into that Mercedes, does George become the number one driver? Are we sure about that? I think Alonso will be the kind of person to challenge. And I think Carlos Sainz, like he's challenged that Ferrari in Charles Leclerc, I think it's the same thing will happen at Mercedes. And in fact, Carlos Sainz could look at this as a proposition and think, you know what, maybe I can become a number one driver at Mercedes if I play my cards right, if I do well, if I perform as he has performed in that Ferrari. Because his Ferrari career, by the way, nothing to snigger at. Since he's arrived at Ferrari, I think he's got the same race wins as Charles Leclerc. And this is the same Charles Leclerc who's one of the fastest on the grid, who gets those pole positions. When the car is alive, when it's ready, the pole position is there. Charles Leclerc, he likes to take them. And I'm sure he was gutted about Australian Grand Prix, because the last two Ferrari wins have come from, in fact, the last three Ferrari wins have come from Carlos Sainz. So you think about the Singapore Grand Prix last year, you think about the Australian Grand Prix this year, and don't forget Silverstone, 2022 Silverstone as well. So it's been quite a career for Carlos Sainz at Ferrari. It's not been bad. It's not been bad at all. So he can step into that Mercedes and say, hello, George Russell. Welcome. By the way, every time I win a race, this is Carlos Sainz speaking. I'm pretending I'm him. Every time I win a race, you seem to crash. We forgot about that one, haven't we? When Carlos Sainz won the British Grand Prix, where was George Russell? Giving Joe Guan Yu a hand, because he was upside down after he had got into an incident. Singapore, what was it, the final turn or second to last corner? Where was George Russell? Did he not fly into the barriers afterwards? And then again, you know, I know. Listen, I'm not saying like all of these are George Russell's faults, all of these incidents like what happened in Australia, right? Listen, I'm just saying, innit? When Carlos Sainz wins, here's what's happening to Russell. When Russell does this, Here's what's happening to Sainz. That's all I'm saying. Not to get on people's step on anyone's toes there. But Carlos Sainz has got a great situation here at Mercedes where he can fight for #1 drive. If I'm Carlos Sainz, I'm getting on the phone. I'm getting on the phone to Toto Wolff and saying, listen, talk to me about this car. Like, what's going on? Why is it the way it is? And then do you see things changing? And if you see things changing, then guess what? Bring me in. I can win races. I've shown you I can win races. I am fast. I am good. I'm reliable. Look at his CV. When you look at Carlos, I'm not talking about championships or anything, nothing like that. But look at his CV. He's done well against, when he had, did he have Danny Ricciardo? Was it K-Mag? Or I can't remember who he had at Renault. Had a good stint at Renault. Had a good stint at Toro Rosso. Okay, Verstappen and him. We'll get onto that conversation just a bit in a second. But he did well at Toro Rosso. He did well at Renault. He did well at McLaren. Okay, fighting Lando Norris. He's very well. And then at Ferrari, he's done well to swing toe to toe with Charles Leclerc. We know that Charles Leclerc is probably the faster driver, but when it comes to the total package, what are we saying? Carlos Sainz has got the numbers. He's there as well. He's there. So Mercedes for me is a very, very big, what's the word I'm looking for? Lucrative situation there. Sainz cannot waste this move. He cannot waste it. And this idea of kick Sauber, of maybe Aston Martin, no, I'm not. That's not the move you should make, Carlos Sainz. That is not the move to make in 2025. But then there is Red Bull, finally. Red Bull, okay? Now, many are asking, hang on a minute, really? Would you want to join Max Verstappen? And that doesn't look ideal. Anyone that seems to be a teammate of Max Verstappen lately has faded into the distance. In fact, Carlos Sainz was once upon a time there with said Max Verstappen in that Toro Rosso, right? And when Max Verstappen met Sebastian Vettel, and when he met Danny Ricciardo, and when he met Checo, when he met Albon, Gasly, the lot, he's put them to the side. He puts them to the side. Checo, funny enough, was in a situation just like this, where we're ending the year 2020, okay? And we were saying, how is Sergio Perez not in a seat in Formula One? This is ridiculous. This is preposterous. When Sebastian Vettel took his seat from Force India, Pink Racing Point into Aston Martin. And Checo was in that situation. We're thinking, hang on a minute, Checo deserves to be in a car that is near the front of the grid at least, right? And he got in that car, but Max Verstappen has dealt with him. Still, Checo's got his race wins there in that Red Bull. And I think you could get a similar, and maybe, I don't know if it's going to be a better version than Checo. I don't want to speak too soon because, like I said, I think Max Verstappen, when he gets in that car, when he's a teammate of yours, he does more than just win races. He knocks confidence. He kills people's pride. He kills drivers. And so when it comes to Carlos Sainz, I'm not going to be there saying, hey, Carlos Sainz is going to swing toe to toe with Max Verstappen. You can't guarantee that. You can see Sainz being another Checo when he gets there. And that will probably prove to the world that, okay, Verstappen is special. You know what I mean? Like, he's just special. Like, teammates don't know what to do when he's around. That's how good he is. That's how dominant he is. That's how box office he is. And maybe we just have to admit that one day. We just have to just say, look, it is what it is. But Carlos Sainz, if Red Bull come knocking on the door, I do not want to hear you at Sauber. I don't want to hear you at the Aston Martin. And I barely want to hear you at Mercedes if Red Bull come knocking. Why? Because it's the best car by far on the grid. Carlos Sainz will have ample opportunity to win races. Will have ample opportunity. Now, don't get me wrong. They might pull rank when it comes to Verstappen and co. But so what? You're in the fastest car. You want the fastest car in Formula One. That's what you want. More than being, in my opinion, the number one driver of a team. Because what's better? Number one driver at Mercedes or the fastest car swinging with Max Verstappen? I know what I would take. And I'm hoping Carlos Sainz makes a wise decision, makes a clever decision. Of course, I don't know the ins and outs. I'm speculating. I'm guessing. I'm just like the rest of you guys, okay? Wondering, waiting to see where he makes this move. But I tell you what, the stocks are rising. The stocks are rising with a Carlos Sainz right now. Because if you're going to win races, people like Horner are going to go on the phone and say, hey, what are you saying next year? And we've been seeing, have we not been seeing Carlos Sainz and Horner talking a little bit? Have we not been seeing a little bit of that? I've been seeing Horner and his people talking. And so I wouldn't put that one off the table. What do you guys think in the comment section? Let me know. Smash a like in this video if you like Formula One content like this. If you like Carlos Sainz, where do you want to see Carlos Sainz in 2025? Let me know in the comment section and let's have a lovely conversation about this. Until next time, people, lights out.